I realize I say this a lot, but really, honestly, one of my favorite new features in CS5 is the selection improvements, because selections can be really difficult, and they revolve, and so many things revolve around them that when selections improve, a lot of things improve inside of Photoshop. All right, so the way I start off with selection here, I've got a couple of demonstrations for you. I typically start off with the quick selection tool, okay, and that's been around for quite a while inside of Photoshop. And you got to start somewhere, so I just kind of give myself a base to work off of. All right, and just keep clicking around. We'll grab a shoe. You don't have to do anything to add to the selection. It's automatically will always be in add mode. If you wanted to subtract from the selection, then you would hold down your Option key on Mac or the Alt key on PC. All right, and we'll come in here, just remove that area. I find that when you include people's arms, it usually helps out. So we'll go ahead and add those arms, and even the hands help out as well. So I recommend you do that. And let's zoom in a little bit here and see if we can get his hands. And make a smaller brush and see if we can get the fingers in here as well. And again, this is all giving me something to work from. Okay, because as you're going through this, if you're wondering if this sounds, you're like, this stuff sounds kind of difficult. It's really a pain. Selections are one of the questions we get the most, and there is no magic bullet. So the best thing that I can do is tell you, if you're going to be selecting people off of their backgrounds and replacing backgrounds and things like that, be prepared to spend time. It's one of the hardest things that you can do inside of Photoshop. Okay, and we've got a little bit where we didn't quite get all the way out here, but in a second here, we're going to see a lot of the power of what's happened inside of CS5. So I'm not even going to worry about all these extra little areas that we've missed here. I might get the real obvious ones, but I'm not going to go too much further with this. I think we're doing pretty good. All right, maybe just a little bit, see if I can just get rid of some of that gray space there. And we got a little bit more right over here. All right, so I think we have got a good selection to start to work with here. Just took a couple minutes. Now, when you have a selection tool active, you're going to see Refine Edge up here. Click on that. It's going to open the Refine Edge dialog, which is not new, but some of the options inside the dialog are new. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is just hit Command+ to zoom in. And you've got a couple of different view modes up here. I kind of like Overlay. And I also kind of like on black, especially because I'm selecting off of a light color background. So if I see it on black, I'll definitely see any areas that I have some problems with. The next thing we got here is edge detection. So this is new in CS5. There's automatic edge detection here. And the way you think of it is there's a base selection that's already going on, which is what we have here. Okay. Now the radius says, how far outside of that base selection do you want me to start going to look try to automatically detect edges? So as I increase the radius, you'll start to see things start to change here. Okay, see when it was down low, especially the hair is a really good place to look for this. See when it's down low, I've got a pretty refined edge selection around that hair. As I start to increase it, it starts going and looking out further beyond those edges. And you can see this if you click on Show Radius. It actually shows you where it's starting to go out and look. You can see how far it starts to get out from the original and actually looks to see for, any areas that it might want to include inside of there. Now, the Smart Radius option says, all right, and let's go ahead and turn off the show option. Smart Radius says, all right, well, do you want me to come in here and start to tweak this myself? Okay, when you turn on it, and I generally recommend turning on Smart Radius. When you turn that on, it's automatically starting to look at some more of those edges for you instead of you having to go in there and fine tune and tweak them. And it'll usually give you a much better selection when you turn it on, because it's using the technology to help figure out what it should select. All right. We come down here to smooth. Notice we have a very jagged selection along his chest hair and some of the other areas. And just a very small incremental increase here is going to start to smooth those areas out. Feather softens the selection. It's not new inside this dialog. We've had that for a while. It's almost like a blurred edge. If you've ever had selected a person, put them on a different background and it looks fake because the edge is so harsh, feather is one of those settings that's going to help you out. All right, so we're going to keep a very low feather setting. Contrast is one of those settings that comes in here, and let me crank it up higher and you can see what it does. See, it kind of harshens the edge. It's almost counteracting what we did with smooth, but not all the way. So we're not really going to do anything there. Shift edge. If you look down here, you can see that we've included some of the background. So if I shift the edge inward, I can get rid of that, but it's also going to shift the entire thing inward. So for the most part, I think we're going to leave it where it is. We don't want to start bringing in too much from the background here. I actually think we're doing pretty good. Okay, decontaminate colors. We don't really have too much of a color fringe here. So in the next example, I'll show you where this comes in. But for the most part, I think we're done with our selection here. And I'm just going to click OK. And it puts this onto a selection. It just tweaked the selection that we had. So I'm going to copy it. I'm going to open up the other document that we had here, and I'm going to paste it in. Okay, and then maybe resize it a little bit and kind of bring it up. Maybe just put him right onto the ground. It's obviously, he's too big for the background, but we're not going to, I want you to be able to still see what we've done here and zoom in and take a look. I mean, you got to admit, that's a pretty darn good selection for really just spending a few minutes on it. Look at his hair. Look at how much we were able to save and salvage from all of that hair that was on that background. Okay, so let's go over here and take a look at the second example. And what we're going to do is take our quick selection tool once again, and we've got to start at some point. So we'll just make a selection of this gentleman. We will also make a selection of all of the grass down here. We want to make sure we get the horse into it. Right around there. I think we're doing pretty good. The one thing I might do is just make a small brush here and hold down Option or Alt and get rid of that little blue area inside of there. And I think we're doing pretty good here. That's a good base to work off of, because this is a perfect example where I want to show you what these tools can do to help you. So let's go over here, click on Refine Edge. And when the dialog box opens, you're going to see that we by no means have a very good selection here. Okay, well, there's another tool that can help us, because while I might want to come in here and increase my radius and start working, you're going to see that when I do that smart radius, it's looking at the whole image and things. I don't want smart radius on every part of the image because I had a good selection on a lot of parts of this image. All right, so we're going to turn that off and go back. What we do have over here is a Refine Radius brush tool. Okay, and where that comes in is we're actually going to take the brush tool, and you can use your right and left bracket keys to increase and decrease it. And let's just brush right along the grass here. See what that, check that out. I mean, seriously, let's go back. Just brush along the grass and look at what it's done to the top of the grass there. Come over here, do the same thing. Let's move the dialog out of the way and just get along the top there. And it's taken care of. It's refining the radius for us in just that specific area. We can do the same thing over the horse up at the top here, and we can refine that. And I'm not going to really do too much more. I might do it right along the edge of his tail there. So that's looking pretty good. Let's turn on Smart Radius, and let's just start to bring in some of those edges if we can, to some of those other edges of the photo. Smooth. In fact, let's go over here, and you can erase your refinement. So let's say, and let's get a smaller brush. Let's say we're bringing in too much of the sky over here. So I'm going to have to erase some of it. Okay. And it's just, if you happen to go over too far, that's where you'd come in and erase it. And smooth, we're not really going to do too much with smooth or feather or contrast. I'm going to start to bring up my Smart Radius some more here. That's looking pretty good. But here's where decontaminate colors comes in. Okay, so let's zoom into the image, and you can see we've got some color fringes right down here along his tail. We've got some color fringes over here. So when I turn on decontaminate colors, I'm just going to crank it way up so you can see the difference. All right, that's when it's off, and that's when you turn it on. Okay, so take a look at some of the edges that start to have some of the blue fringes. This is off, and this is on. Okay, so what it's doing is it's kind of neutralizing some of those fringes. Look what it's done over here. It's not totally gone, but it's really neutralized a lot of that blue fringe that we have over here. And it's essentially decontaminating some of those color fringes that you'll see when you start to make selections. All right, so at this point, let's click OK. And you can see we've got our gentleman here. It's actually made a layer mask of this. So if I Command or Control click on it and I copy it, we could always take him and put him into the same image that we used before. And just kind of move it. And it's a little bit too big, so let's bring the size down. And that's looking pretty good for what we need it for. Hit enter, return. So let's zoom in and take a look at really what it's done here. All right, look at the grass. We're able to see, in fact, there was even a tree back there. And so you're able to see that it really keeps all those edges along the selection. As I go through the image here, take a look at you don't see any of that glow around here. And we did the same thing down here. Okay, so that's the selection improvements inside of CS5. Honestly, I think it's one of the biggest improvements that they've done there, because selections have ties into so many areas inside of Photoshop. And when you change selections and improve selections, it makes everything else so much easier.